morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Saturday morning Bible study. This is Saturday, September 9th, 2017, and our moderator is Mike from New York. So, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. The reading, abide in the 91st Psalm. Inasmuch as I am God's child, spiritual and not material, I must be perfect. I am whole, I am free, I have all that I need. I live in spirit and not in matter. I am without a care and without anxiety. No one can hurt me nor take from me anything that is good. I know no such thing as sin, suffering, want, or disease, for I am the perfect reflection of life, truth, and love. I am never disappointed. The harmony of my being cannot be disturbed because I live in the infinite. That's from the chapter of Arguments by Mary Baker Eddy, in Divinity Course in General Collectanea, the Blue Book.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay. Any comments on the reading? This is Mary Baker Eddy telling us to abide in the 91st Psalm. So she thought very highly of this psalm, didn't she?
Very comforting.
I think it's something good to work with daily for ourselves and to send it out.
Okay, so let's get into it.
So the topic is the 91st Psalm, Part 2. We had gone 1 through 8 previously. Any need to comment on that, or shall we go ahead with 9 through 16? So the Bible readings were the 91st Psalm 1 through 16, additional readings, 91st Psalm booklet with spiritual interpretation by Doris White Evans. Again, one of the best sources to understand the Psalm. And questions are, what does each verse of Psalm 91 mean to you? And let's start then with verse 9, please.
Okay, who would like to read verse 9?
I'll read it. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation.
One of the things I came across in the commentaries I thought was interesting in reference to the habitation was the point made that you are making the Lord your habitation. You don't have two homes, but you abide in one. It's to me, it was like this idea of being double-minded. In this here, he is making the Lord his habitation only.
I love what Moffat says. Moffat is one of the Bibles that Plainfield, I found out about from Plainfield. It says that you have sheltered beside the eternal and made the Most High God your home, so no scathe can befall you. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, this is getting pretty close, isn't it? Making it your home. What does that mean to each of us? Make God our very home.
Me, it means that if God is my home, that's where I stay. And not only that, I'm very consistent with it. I'm consistent with God, with good, and not vacillating back and forth with the throes of evil or error or other influences, but consistently staying with God, which is a discipline, of course.
Well, yeah,
For me,
the
with
idea-
home,
No, go ahead.
for me with home, I just get the sense that it's where I'm safe and it's where my family is. And I know before coming to Plainfield, I never really felt like I had a home. So to have that feeling is a really good feeling.
Well, yeah, because it's your home base. It's the basis from which you start each day, isn't it? It's where you dwell.
So I think that
The refuge from the world.
From the what?
The refuge from the world or worldly belief.
Yeah, that's right.
I think a place you're most satisfied. You want to keep coming back to that clear consciousness of your home everywhere.
And Fairley's point about goes back to Linda's, doesn't it? Because some people try to make their home in the world, don't they?
Yep.
And as Jesus said, the house has many mansions or rooms, so that means there's room for everybody.
That's where we all dwell anyway. I mean, it's God and man, we've learned that it's God and man only. So if that's true and God is the home, then that's where we all dwell. I think it's a matter of, are we aware of it? Is it something prominent in our thinking that this is where I dwell, this is where I live? Always.
Thank you, Florence.
Because thou hast made the Lord thy habitation. Yeah.
Yeah, because what does Paul say? He said, in him we live and move and breathe. When he was explaining to the Greeks who their unknown God actually was. And so think about what we actually dwell in. Our home is divine truth. Our home is divine love. That's our home.
He who dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, for God is love.
What do we have to do about it?
well, what we have to do is, I think this is where our thought is. Someone just said our thinking. So, is our thought on God, or is our thought on something else? And when our thought is on God, that's when we're dwelling in the secret place of the Most High.
Yeah. And as Florence said, we are there. That's the fact. There is no other place other than God, because there is no place where God is not. It's a question of whether we're aware of it.
I'm not sure if it's aware. I was thinking it's where our thought is.
Well, you know,
where your thought is, you'll be aware of what is there. and I mean, it's even more than that. It's like, am I really grateful for it? Like we talk about all the time. Is this something I cherish? Is this something that I feel is so important that I go back to often?
Thank you.
Well, it's where our thinking is at. I mean, we may be aware of it, but have our thinking elsewhere in the world, as Fairley said, but the key is to keep the thinking on God, which is so well defined and brought out here at Plainfield.
Yeah, and I think we're saying the same thing, being aware of it, thinking of it. But doesn't it also mean that the most important thing we can do in this lifetime is to find out what, who, and what God is? Since it is our habitation, or it should be, what we are aware of.
I think that's interesting because it says here, shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. When I was looking up how that's defined, it was interesting that it talks about, abide, it's kind of like where we're staying or living or something like that. But also, it tells us that, it's a sense of waiting, to be patient, and if you think about it, we dwell in God by thinking about God and being obedient to Him, but we're patient in how things go about.
But also, yeah, exactly. But also, don't we need to be clear about what it is that we're being obedient to?
Well, I'd agree because I was not being obedient before I came to Plainfield, and a lot of it had to do because I had no idea who and what God was. And the more I learn about God, the clearer obedience needs to be. So I think it's very correlated.
Thank you.
Because after all, this talks about abiding in God, who is good. Everybody's got their idea as to what is good. But then the next question is, to what extent does that correspond with a divine model of divine good? And I think that's what we're in the process of learning, is that our real home is in divine good, but to what level are we understanding it and recognizing it? So it is a process, and
that's where Tom's patience comes in, doesn't it?
I like that idea of the real home too, because one of the things about Christian Science that really spoke to me at first was the idea of that this is, learning about reality, God's reality, as opposed to unreality. And before, the way I was living, I always had this sort of suspicion that I was living in a dream, and it turns out it was true. So to actually be learning about how to live in reality makes sense. We should be doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, think about how we go about each day. Are we? Is every part of our experience taken back to God to check what's real? Do we take it back to our home to see if it fits right, if it's from God? Or do we accept things that are not of God and just shrug our shoulders and say, well, I got to deal with it?
Or if something comes up, do I say, no, I live, move, and have my being in God, reminding myself of that, where I dwell, who I am with. Bignell Young talks a lot about being conscious of our oneness with God. I think this applies to it.
Thank you, yeah. That's a good way to describe it. Be conscious of our oneness with God. That's making Him our habitation, isn't it? Quite a discipline. But it's what we're learning to do, isn't it?
Before I came into Christian Science, I made my past experiences my home. And that's where I dwelled day and night. And it was sickening. Driven to attempt suicide, and it made me crazy. But
Yes.
through Christian Science and learning the truth and getting closer to God, and the work of my practitioner freed me, and they enabled me to move into the house of the Lord. Lifted
Thank
me
you.
above the false consciousness of that whole dream. So it's like it is a process, and once you learn who God is and the attributes of God, you start demonstrating and exemplifying those attributes, then your dwelling place changes.
For the better. Thank you, Luann. Who would like to read verse number 10?
Actually, I want to say one more thing about this discipline, about making God our habitation, and that is that it is a joyous discipline. It's not arduous, it is joyous.
Thank you.
I'll read verse 10. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling.
Protection is in God. God is our protection.
Quite a promise, isn't it?
Yes. As long as we dwell with Him.
Yeah, and
We have to do our part.
And what's the principle involved here? This is a promise. And we learn in science that God's promises are kept, don't we?
Suppose some of it could be the concept that you thought out pictures itself. Like Luann said, that as her thinking changed, her environment changed. So it's,
I think it's something different.
Okay.
Lawrence, what is the principle here? Mike, why can we count on this promise?
It's God's allness.
Thank you. Because in God there is no such thing as evil.
Evil and plagues do not exist in the divine mind. Simply are not there.
And we go back to even the first commandment again. It's saying there is only God and there is nothing else. So there really should be nothing else. And our obedience to the first commandment really leads us there, to that thought that is always clinging to God's allness. And therefore, the things that come up can be seen for what they are.
Thank you. And it says that evil, and we all have a concept that there is the appearance of evil. We're not sweeping it under the rug. But it's not going to befall you.
As one commentary stated, it doesn't say that we won't have afflictions, but God will not allow evil to befall us.
Yes. Because when we dwell in God, when we are obedient to God, when we make it our very being, in other words, when we recognize and acknowledge and are grateful that everything that God is, we have, life changes. Your experience changes. And yes, it requires a change in our thinking, but it's not the change in our thinking. It's the allness of God that is the principle involved here.
I like what Mrs. Evans said when you walk with the Christ, because Jesus is our helper, and when we pay attention to him, he's the way and helps us do all of the things that we're saying we should do.
Yeah. That was his ministry, wasn't it? He wanted us to understand these principles and to live them.
And like what Mike said earlier, we may all have challenges and problems to face, but we do not fall with them. Rather, do we rise above them? Oh, I thought that was very good, Mike. Thank you.
Repeating and defeating.
Amen.
I also think
we shouldn't be discouraged when the problems come. Right? I mean, there is this attitude among some people that if you have a problem, it means if there's something wrong with you, you're screwed up. No.
Well, problems are our practice. It's how we become more godlike, more righteous. Problems are love is not hasty to deliver us from temptation, but it's that concept.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the watching points that was on a few weeks ago, that whatever the problem is, it used the word whips. It whips us onward, higher unto God. I like that very much, because every problem, if you look back, every problem that has come has made us more willing to learn more about God. Has sort of, I guess I'll use the word whip, whipped us onward into God. So the problems come, but we have to use them, as been said here often, as opportunities to go more Godward.
Yeah, and what does Mrs. Eddy say? She says to demand the blessing. Right. And she also says about trials, trials are what?
To God's care.
Yeah.
And as others have said...
Yeah, go. Sorry.
I was going to say, but as others have said here, that joy that's incomparable to any other happiness that I had previous to this, the joy signifies that you've come at one with God because of that affliction.
Yeah. And neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. Any sickness, any adverse weather, any plague. You've got a dwelling that nothing can penetrate.
Prophet uses, no plague can approach your tent. Like that word.
Yeah. And if it tries, well, you've got all the power of God to repel it. Because it was never substance in the first place. What did Mrs. Eddy say about, or what did Carpenter say about how Mrs. Eddy would handle an oncoming storm?
He just looked up to it and saw the face of God.
Yes. She saw the face of God. God was her habitation. And that stilled the storm.
That's what Christ did when the disciples were so afraid and he was just asleep to what seemed to be them a problem. And he woke up and he just stilled the storm.
Yeah. So he showed us what to do, didn't he?
He lived it for the example.
Yep. And so did Mrs. Eddy.
Not to see the storm as a storm or a weather condition, but as the eternal power and divine nature of God. Don't treat the storm as a weather condition, but as see it as
It's disturbed thought.
As a mesmerism, attempting to get you to believe that there is a power other than God.
A storm of false belief. Like what Victor Young talks about, the only elements there are spiritual elements functioning and operating according to spiritual law. Working with that's beautiful. It's in his 1936 primary class.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any more comments on this? Okay, shall we go to 11? Who would like to read? Thank you.
For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways.
His angels. And what are his angels?
Right thought.
Not thought passing to man. Spiritual intuition.
Holy thoughts winged with love. These angels of his, God's presence, which have the holiest charge, abound in the spiritual atmosphere of mind.
And uplifting thoughts leading to God.
So here's God, the one divine mind, all of whose ideas have all the power of mind behind them. So divine love sends whatever your need is to meet your need. Divine truth sends the truth to you in whatever form is needed to meet your need.
Spurgeon has something very interesting. He says, God says, "Come here, Gabriel, come here, Michael, and all the rest of you," says the great King of Kings to the angels around his throne. And when they come at his call, he says, "Take care of my child. Watch over him today." Beautiful.
That is beautiful. Well, it's a comforting picture, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Protection. God's care.
Yeah. And this is not a big superhuman up in the sky sending other superhumans down occasionally.
No.
From time to time. No. This is an infinite divine mind that is always active, always sending us whatever it is that we need. we have a responsibility, don't we?
Listen and obey.
Yeah, the beginning, verse number 1, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High. We have to acknowledge, we have to dwell there. We have to make it our home.
And not only sends his angels, he sends a whole league of angels. As long as we dwell.
Yeah, he's got an invincible army of angels, doesn't he?
Takes you the whole way out, just step by step. If you fall short and just follow the first step, and then step away from that duty to dwell in God, and then you fall short of getting out of trouble. But God takes you the whole way out with a whole league of angels.
Thank you. Yeah, it says to keep thee in all thy ways, doesn't it? Is there any part of your life that he doesn't send angels?
No, because that's the emphasis of the word charge, as it gives complete control. And then put you in all the ways of God. Not just some of them, all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nothing left out, is there?
No, unless we step out of his way.
I did take a look at ways, and it's amazing what that one little word can mean. But the biggest part of it is that it's a path, a course, a manner of thinking, motive, practice, way of behaving, right method to act or know. And a very clear path. For example, ways are the things that a ship is built on, and then you push it down it into the water. So it's a distinct path, no deviation.
Yeah, there isn't anything in our life that God is not in control of. So if you think you've got a little corner of your life that you just have to live with that's not right, no, that little corner of your life has to dwell in God also. One of the toughest for a lot of us is our immediate human family, isn't it? Our live home.
I've been working on that for a little while now, trying to unburden my home, taking out all the things that are not of God. And some of that has to do with my family coming over to my house and having to deal with their problems that they have. So I've been really working hard to hold on to the truth and dwell in God and give them the Word of God. And it seems to be working. So I'm just going to keep going with it and keep my home unburdened.
That's wonderful.
I think what's helpful there, I had to deal with that too in terms of when family gathered around. It was always tensions and stuff. And what was helpful is, or what is helpful, is to just try to uplift thought, to see them all as God's ideas or children with the attributes of God. The way I think of myself now, being the reflection of God, the same way to think of them. Because I know that once I thought, Mary is coming or this one is coming, personality, then there was, the memory or the thought of the things that they do or some of the things that I didn't like. That was a problem. So, to change that personality to the individuality has been helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and this is all examples of loving them, isn't it?
Yes, essentially, that's it.
Yeah. The greatest love to anyone is to see them as God's child. Except the personality that would appear or might have appeared in the past. No, If it's not of God, it's not true about them. That is making God your habitation. That is making God your home.
It's an interesting thing because when I first came here, I encountered a few things, and I, just in my own thought, I was like, oh, people, just let me change, And then after a little bit, I realized, but I'm not letting them change in my thoughts. So to have that realization really has helped quite a good deal.
Yeah, because you really do have dominion over everything around you, don't you?
Yes, dominion reflected, from God.
Yeah, exactly. And that includes all the people around you, whether it's your family, whether it's your business, whether it's your neighborhood, whatever. You have dominion. Because God is your home. Wherever you go, you're at home with God. At least that's what we should be doing.
What's become evident is that when I have the wrong thoughts, whether it's family, government, or any situation, I feel physically not well, and then I switch that over to I will be done. Let God deal with it. This is God's issue. All of a sudden, that lifts and feel the joy come back.
Yeah.
You need not be afraid of their faces. Family comes over, their character and all that. We need not fear that because God is with us always.
That was in a recent lesson, wasn't it?
Last week, I think, yeah.
And if we let it happen, we'll be confounded.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't fear the kickback or the anger or the whatever. If it's not of God, it's not true about them. Shall we go on to the next one, or any more thoughts on 11?
We should go on.
Who wants to read number 12?
Jan? They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone.
Another very comforting picture, isn't it?
They refers to the angels, and also to me it means to acknowledge that there is a force that lifts us above evil and holds us with the divine. It is a force that does it. To bear thee up, that's a strong action. There is a force for good, and we're with it.
Yeah, and it's it pushes us in one direction only, right?
how essential it is, because if you don't, it's a stone.
Yeah, and what is dashing thy foot against the stone refer to?
A hard, difficult situation.
Yeah, hard material on the ground, down. Just the opposite of spiritual and up.
You're stumbling.
Yeah, you don't get down in the mud and wrestle with it. The angels lift you up out of it.
Matthew Henry, he says, they shall keep thee in thy ways, that is, as long as thou keepest in the way of thy duty.
That's a resistance to the good that is coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
As one commentary said, it's also a small stone being not a huge rock that you pump your whole body into, so it's even the little things that trip you up. So in all details, God is there.
Yeah.
I like that concept too of the lifting up. This we are told to always be lifting up our sight above the false picture. So it's a lifting up, always being carried up above it, overcoming it. And
I looked up a hand in the 1828 Webster's, and this was some of it. Hand of God is his eternal purpose and executive power, providential bounty of God, power exerted, judgment and mercy and grace, sign influence, at hand and near, present, within reach, under one's care or management, without delay, hesitation, or difficulty, immediately, dexterously, without previous preparation, ever ready.
Yeah, there's nothing theoretical about God's power, is there? No. It is totally practical. I mean, that's one of the things that appealed to me so much about Christian Science, even as a young child learning about it. It is a totally practical science. God's love for us is totally practical. We can count on it all the time, no matter what the circumstance.
it's a beautiful thought, the king and his children. And Spurgeon was talking about what a royal protection we have, a God of angels who counted their delight and their honor to wait upon the seed royal of the universe. For such are all the saints of God. So it's just a beautiful high concept of how God sees his children and the protection, unfailing protection that is always there.
You are the sons and daughters of the King. Okay, anybody else on number 12?
Just wanted to point out the article that's on the website. I'm not sure if it's been mentioned already, called Watching by Parsons, which is something that I read just this morning, and it speaks directly to what we're talking about here. Basically, when being faced with any challenge or any reason to fear, taking the time that you need, however long, get your consciousness aligned with God and his allness. And that allows you to meet any challenge with no fear. And it's about watching inside, the importance of watching inside versus watching outside, and how when you get your thoughts aligned with the allness of God, it allows you to be of more help, of course, to yourself and to everyone else. And it gives you the courage and the strength needed to meet any challenge. So I recommend that to anyone.
Thank you, Dave. It's an excellent article. Okay. Anybody want to read 13?
Read it. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet.
That's quite a picture, isn't it?
Doesn't matter how scary the error makes itself appear to be.
Yeah. Or no matter how tall, no matter how big it appears.
Much fire it breathes.
I thought it was interesting.
Adder is for a snake.
What was that?
Is an adder a snake?
Yeah, an adder is a poisonous snake, yes. In other words, these are wild animals that were actually a challenge to the people at the time. Today, we don't run into poisonous snakes or lions very much.
The thing about the snake is it's at a low level and can sneak up you in a subtle way. But even that one, even the subtle one that doesn't make a big appearance, you can trample it underfoot as well.
And what might be equivalent today of a dangerous attacker?
Advertisements on drugs.
Mm-hmm. Well, about a hurricane.
Yeah, the approaching storm.
Or how about a dictatorship? Nuclear missiles.
How about traffic?
Terrorist attack.
Yeah.
Terrorist attacks are sneaky, often.
Yep. But what does it say? Thou shalt trample under feet.
All these evil forces become harmless by way
We
of God.
destroy
We have dominion over all things.
To overcome them.
The lion represents sort of the opposite of the adder. It's big and ferocious and very visible and very frightening.
Right. And how do you trample it under your feet? You got to get pretty high up in the air to do that, don't you?
High up in thought, in knowing that they are unreal. You are liars coming forth. The unreality of it is what kills it, Mrs. Eddy says.
Yeah, and in order to trample all these things under our feet, we have to rise above them, don't we?
Yes.
In other words, you don't get down in the mud and wrestle with them on their own terms. Nobody ever wins an argument. Right?
Kind of refers to the next verse where it says, I will set him on high because he hath known my name.
Yeah, these angels bear thee up in their hands, lift you up. Florence said, to see the unreality of the evil, no matter what the picture is, to trample it under your feet.
can use the synonyms and the attributes of God to do the trampling?
Absolutely. What does Mrs. Eddy say about divine life, truth, and love? The law?
Annihilation. Do anything unlike themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. And those come to us as angel thoughts to meet whatever need we have. They have all the power of God behind them because they are true and because they are everything that there is. Okay, any more on 13? We're moving. I might actually finish this today. Somebody want to read 14?
I will.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hear you.
Go ahead.
Suzanne?
Yeah. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name.
Now, who is this speaking in this verse?
God.
Yeah, we're changing the person speaking here. Verse 13 were the writer of the Psalms speaking. But this is actually God speaking now, verse 14. So what is this saying?
God's promise.
You have to go to God first, and then He will come to you. He doesn't just come, but you're proving yourself by loving Him and going to Him, and then He takes care of you.
I'd like to read from the Amplified Bible exactly what Lil said. When he has a personal knowledge of my mercy, love, and kindness, trusts and relies on me, knowing I will never forsake him. No, never. Where it says, because he has known my name. Name is nature, because we're learning the nature of God, his goodness and his care, and that takes care of everything.
Yeah, and when you remember someone's name, there's a reason why you remember their name. Right? They mean something to you. If God's name and nature is innermost in our heart, written on our forehead, is first in our love for him, for his nature. That is making it our dwelling place. That is making God our home, isn't it?
Yes. Something in Mrs. Eddy's hymn, Christ My Refuge, it said the same thing and did it for me. Low, sad, and sweet, whose measures bind the power of pain. And it was the first time I realized that God was somewhat sad when we had troubles, and he would deal with this and help us. And it was so invigorating, it changed my nature also.
Thank you, Craig.
It's like when they say that, when we find God, we find ourselves. that's all we can be.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's one of Peter's songs, isn't it?
Yes.
I like what Spurgeon says. He says, we are not on high until God sets us there.
We are nothing of ourselves.
God does the promoting, doesn't he?
Yes.
Anybody that tries to promote themselves is in for a disappointment. Yeah. When love for God is first in our hearts, when we love God above all else, everything else falls into place, doesn't it? That love protects us. It delivers us.
That means we have sought him first, and the promises and all these things shall be added unto us, unto you. So.
And that's what Christian Science healing is, isn't it? It's not fixing a material issue. It's the power of God lifting us up above the false beliefs. I mean, the picture of, I was thinking the picture of Daniel in the lion's den. He is looking up out the window, and it's his love for God that delivered him from the lions. And if we have that same love for God, he will deliver us from whatever lions are trying to eat us up. Shall we move on to 15? We're getting close here. Someone read 15.
I will read. Thank you. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him.
That one's pretty straightforward. It hardly needs interpretation.
Yeah. Mind the all-hearing ear. He knows everything, doesn't he? He hears everything. And he knows what's in our hearts.
But we must call upon him.
Yes.
You shall call upon me.
Yes. And it's remarkable to me how well he protects us even when we snub him, even when we forget about him. He is still loving us and caring for us. How much more would we experience when we do love him? Make him everything, because he is everything. An awfully powerful, loving Father, isn't it?
Yes, never failing, never fails.
As one commentary put it, we are first called to God, then we call upon God, and he always answers.
Yeah. So, do we always call upon God first? Sometimes it's tempting to call upon someone or something else first, isn't it?
Google.
Yeah. Well, it's like that cartoon that Mary mentioned last weekend that she saw in Politico, where cartoon of people in Houston being rescued. And the man in the boat boat said, an angel sent from God. He was so grateful for the help. One of the guys in the boat said, no, it's actually the Coast Guard sent by the government.
Yeah.
How quickly some people forget the source of all good.
God never deserts us. He's always there.
No. Nope.
But when those other people are brought low, I'm sure they'll be looking to God too.
I think a lot of people are looking to God right now. So.
Well, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And we can know that God delivers all of his children.
Present, all loving God, always at hand. And I love Mrs. Eddy when she says that we must utilize the moral might of mind in order to walk over the ways of error and support your claims by demonstration. So we're called to just look at this might of mind. I think that's something I used to not think very much of, but that might of mind always present and will deliver us.
Thank you. Thank you. And our job is to make it our home. Okay, one more verse. Who would like to
I would.
read the last? Thank you.
With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation.
There we go. And what's the principle behind a long life?
Does life ever end?
Life is eternal. So start acting that way. Yep. And as long as we are useful to him where we are, he will keep us here. And be satisfied with it. What a promise.
It's a wonderful psalm. Thanks to David.
Oh, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Thank you for this lesson. This is a wonderful lesson. It's so wonderful to be with all of you who understand.
The perfect way to get back into Bible studies.
Yeah, exactly. No,
We did get a couple of volunteers, but we're still going to use more if anyone's interested.
Right, we have volunteers for the next 2 Saturdays, but nothing beyond that, right?
Right, correct.
Okay. So step up, let Linda or Jeremy know if you're anyone who wants to moderate going forward. Well, thank you very much, Mike, and thank you all who contributed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be together.
Mike.
Thank you.
Well done.
That was wonderful.
Bye-bye.